right. There's no angels where I go, only pieces that are broken, scattered dreams across the floor. I'm home.
Alrighty, hello everybody, this is Kirusho here. Now, whenever we last left off, Deku, he had just gotten back from the island event and pulled himself together. Along with that, he has gotten a new Quark and a new device. The Quark Enhancement Machine, or, well, headset. This is going to be something that Deku finds quite interesting. Reiko, she's the only one who knows exactly what this is. Deku does not. In fact, he thought about crushing it and just taking it away. But Reiko grabbed it, so clearly they've at least accomplished the mission. Now, today, however, is a bit different. It has been roughly 2 to about 4 months. And, well, Deku is waking up today. After all this time, he is supposed to go meet somebody. And in fact, he knows that this is going to be a bit tricky. Deku would wake up and, well, climb out from underneath the pile of women that he's under. Basically, trying to at least get away. He has been spending more time with them and having a bit more fun. Along with that, him and Kirishima have been fighting at the cage matches more and more. Kirishima improving massively. Along with him, trying to get control over this metal manipulation. As everyone gets up early. Deku goes to make coffee and some tea for Sayako. Along with actually being to help Kirigiri make breakfast, since he is up at this time. They are thinking. Deku, he would continue to make things. Making a large breakfast. And actually getting things ready. Everyone coming out to see this. Deku basically saying that he felt like this was needed. In fact, he believes that, well, they should all enjoy breakfast together. And that Kirigiri helped me, but I mostly did the work. As he uses telekinesis to set up the table and actually throw pancakes around on different plates, get the syrup out, orange juice, whatever you can think of, really, name it. And they would have all had a good breakfast, along with actually talking and laughing. Well, you do have one thing. Over in the basement, you have Mei Hatsume. She is focusing on different things, and actually trying to figure this out with her technology. She's been trying to recreate the Cork device, or the Cork Enhancement Machine, that David Shield has made. And she's actually finding it to be very hard. Whenever she does smell coffee, she does actually walk up the stairs, finding everyone eating. And, well, yeah, that's not really good. Usually whenever she walks upstairs, it's supposed to be quiet around this time, giving her plenty of head space. Her going to walk back downstairs. But one thing would have happened. As soon as she goes to close the door, she does feel it stop, but not in the frame, turning back to see that someone actually did grab her hand. Following the wires to see Toru, telling her that they're all having breakfast, so just come and sit down. Besides, did you even go to sleep? Her basically getting pulled over by everyone. Along with everyone at least enjoying the time they have together. Now, with that being said, Shigaraki would walk in. And, well, be a bit surprised. Thinking that that's new, along with actually pulling Deku out of the kitchen telling him that he has a bit of a problem. They found out who exactly was looking for them in the underworld. I've met them before, and I've been meaning to tell you. This is going to be more difficult. You understand that, right, bro? Deku's saying that he gets it. But exactly who is this guy then? First off, he works with the Sekai. Secondly, I'm not too sure. All I know is the fact that he calls himself Overhaul. I'm not sure why. Now, with that happening, eventually Deku and Tomura would have to leave, being pulled aside by Kirigiri, opening a portal and, well, them going all for one. All for one just explained that today is going to be very, very difficult, or different, depending on what outcome happens. First of all, you have the problem with the heroes. They are still trying to find David's shield. In fact, just the other day it was released that he may be actually pronounced deceased, killed in the explosion. So, you need to know, what happens today is going to be very important. You need to find Overhaul. We have a meeting set up with him. However, we do not know about his Quark. I believe I have heard something about him, though. Recently, there was a gang. They used Quark-destroying bullets. Both of these two looking at each other before looking back at All for One. Him continuing to state that these Quark destroyers, as we'll call them, were quite devastating and powerful. In fact, he believes that they turned off a person's Quark for 3 months, or possibly even forever. I'm not too sure. I'm not sure how they treated him, but the hero eventually gained his Quark back. So, clearly this is something new and dangerous. I believe that this man is connected to them. In fact, I believe him to be the direct distributor of these firearms. So, Midoriya. Today we'll be trying to find out exactly what type of Quark this is. Deku confused. Before All for One state that the only way to turn off a Quark would be another Quark's abilities, similarly to Eraserhead. He has been, well, seen as one of the first anti-Quark users. He has a Quark that can cancel Quarks. On the surface, that does not sound very powerful, but in fact, if you look deeper into that, it is. So, this is clearly something else. It's not technology. If it is, then David would let us know. In fact, I believe I also need to talk with him. He will be able to find out exactly what's happening. When he does, he will tell us. Along with that, I do need to ask you one question. Looking over at Midoriya, him saying that you need to hand over the Quark enhancing device. I believe that your friends will be perfectly fine. Deku just correcting his dad, saying friend. She usually has me test prototypes and other things since, well, durability and regeneration. But along with that, I've been letting her test it and at least try and make another one. David is still working on his current one, so for right now we don't have a lot. But what about the public? All for One is saying that the public has been doing good. In fact, he does believe that Principal Nezu of UA is going to be seen in public today. He will be doing a press conference. And while that is happening, you, my boy, are going to be going with him. Deku confused. With him? Yes, my son. You will be taking the role of his bodyguard. Execute the man and take his place. You've been working on augmentation, correct? You can change the size and shape of your body, along with actually using fear, or well, illusions. How good have you been getting at that? Deku just stating that he's gotten good. In fact, if he needs to, he can actually create multiple duplicates. Similarly to, well, clone. All for one just nodding, saying that that ability has gotten better. In fact, I believe a lot of your Quarks have. Now, with that being said, this is where Deku would leave. Going alone. And actually finding Principal Nezu's bodyguard. Deku would have snuck into UA under using the invisibility quirk and began. Whenever he does see the bodyguard, he makes sure to take notice of his face, the expressions, the wrinkles, and everything. As soon as he does have it in his mind, he would morph his face into it, using illusions and body augmentation to actually make sure he can keep a close eye on it, getting to the man's size. As soon as that happens, Deku would have immediately just turned the man around and forces his hand into his mouth, welding it shut, with the guy from Class 1B's Cork, Welded, as the man tries to scream. But, as Lapis says, you do not know pain until you do not know screaming without a mouth. Or wait, what was it? Try screaming without a mouth. If you're lucky, you won't ever learn how to. I think it was something close to that. Anyways, with that, Deku would take on the man's clothes, creating them with his creation Quark and actually getting things ready, along with killing the man by sending him into a black hole. So, Deku would have been fixing his cuffs and actually making sure to keep himself calm. Principal Nezu opening the door and saying that he is ready now. In fact, he does believe that today's conference will at least help soften the blow, as things would get ready. Principal Nezu would walk on stage, along with the bodyguard following behind him, as he would begin his conference. He would go on saying that today is a good occasion. I'm quite aware that UA has not been in a good light for a while. In fact, many of you call us the villains. We do not have that intent in mind. In fact, we are trying to bring heroes into the world. But since all this has started with the USJ, the incident there was, well, something that was not supposed to happen that day. We do still have detectives looking into exactly what has happened. But along with that, I would like to announce one thing. As the big three would step up on stage, along with the pro hero Endeavor being there, with an eye patch and fire burning intensely around that eye. Deku actually looking and taking notice of him, as he would look back forwards, thinking, this is really gonna happen, so this will at least be interesting. Now, after thinking that thought, this is whenever Deku would have an idea. He can take the big three's Quark and, well, Hawk at the same time. If he can take one of these people's Quarks, then he can at least make himself known. Besides, they are still looking for him. And what better place to be than in plain sight? Now, this is whenever Deku would have been paying attention to the conversation once again, noticing that now they are talking about well, the villains in question. Along with one thing. He hears Principal Nezu say that they know the identity of All for One's apprentice, the one that has taken the number 1 hero's eye. And, well, we do believe him to be deceased at this point in time. He has not popped up in quite a while. Now, as for the boy in question, the boy's name is, as Deku would have immediately ran forwards, grabbing onto Principal Nezu and grabbing him by the mouth, and actually holds him and pulls him backwards, taking his Quark from him as Nezu begins to freak out. Confused, before Deku welds his mouth shut and throws him back into the crowd. Everyone in shock. Nezu turning around and looking up, going to say something, realizing that his Quark is gone, and his mouth is closed. This is that boy, just pointing to him and looking at Endeavor. Endeavor going to send a large blast, as Hawk would come flying in, beginning to evacuate the crowd with his feathers. Lemillion getting ready, along with Nejire and Tamaki. One thing happening. Deku hardens to the point of diamond, and would actually surprise Endeavor. Endeavor seeing this as Deku would have taken on the heat, running forwards and immediately bashing him across the face. As portals would open, and one thing would happen. Dobby drops in and immediately begins to unleash fire upon the crowd, as Todoroki would walk forwards. Endeavor taking his focus away and looking towards this new villain, to see them wearing a hood, before they bring up their left arm and blast out fire at him, burning away a majority of it, as Endeavor would have been brought his arms up to block, then let out his own fire to counter it, before looking up to see half of the side of his son's face. Confused for a second as he doesn't believe it, before his son throws his right side out, smashing a large pillar of ice in his direction. Now, Hawk would try and dodge this, as he goes up into the air, and Deku would have immediately looked at him, pulling his arm outwards and pulling him straight down. Hawk feeling something yank onto his legs, confused for a minute, as he goes smashing downwards into the ground. Deku doing one thing, looking directly at Endeavor, and telling him that today is something else. You know this, right? Today I am not messing around anymore. Last time I was taking it easy on you, Endeavor. Deku beginning to course with black and red lightning, Endeavor confused, as Deku would just say that he has gotten better. And well, last time, one of my quirks had a drawback. So, you're not abusing that anymore. Now, Deku would immediately rush in, at high speeds. Endeavor confused for a second as Deku uses clockwork for 2 seconds, getting directly behind Endeavor and smashing him across his back, and actually beginning to slice into him, nearly tearing open part of his back. That has barely healed, as Deku would have gone smashing him in the gut, sending him flying whenever time resumes. Everyone in shock as Lemillion would come in, directly throwing a punch directly point blank into Deku's face. Deku basically splitting into two. Lemillion confuses these two Dekus would go to punch him. As soon as that happens, Lemillion would have used his quirk, permeating through as the other two Dekus begin to collide hands. Before that can happen though, they would have jumped backwards, into the air, and begin to fly, as one Midoriya would be attacked by Hawk, trying to get him away. Hawk trying to think that if he takes away whatever piece of metal he has on him this time, then clearly he can get the advantage to the heroes again. But this is whenever one thing does happen. He would try looking at Midoriya, and thinking. He doesn't hear anything jingling in his pockets, and he doesn't really even, well, think he does. Plus the kid's barely breathing. So exactly what is this? Now, this is whenever Deku would just step forwards, And look at Hawk. The one that's on the ground just does one thing, grabbing his own shirt and ripping it off, to reveal that his chest is fully diamond. So, he's keeping one part of his body, that material, just so I can't take anything from him. And if I do, then shit. As he would immediately just move to the left, dodging out of the way of the incoming Midoriya. As the other one would turn his attention back to Mirio, and begin to fight with him. Endeavor being able to face off against Todoroki and Dabi. The prodigal sons have returned, and people are actually watching this happen. One person actually yelling out that that's Toya Todoroki and, well, Shota Todoroki. They are the Pro Hero's sons. A lot of people actually being confused. They had a funeral and they buried that boy. Or at least they thought they did. They buried both of them. Why are they alive now? And how are they even here now? With that being said, there is a problem. Hawk is feeling himself, well, being a little bit slow. And he's not sure why. He is barely using feathers. As one thing happens. Whenever Midoriya does come in this time, he would have been able to grab Hawk by his hands and actually overpower him, using body augmentation to wrap around him, and actually coil his feathers together, almost clipping them if you would, as Hawk goes flying to the ground, using Fierce Feather to at least just slow his descent and try and move himself around. Basically trying to use his own telekinesis to keep himself moving, even whenever he can't. Which wouldn't really work. Midoriya using his own telekinesis to force him into the ground. Deku might as well be throwing a car at Hawk. That is the amount of force Deku is using. And Hawk is quite surprised. He didn't feel this in their last battle, so exactly what is happening? Midoriya doing one thing. Holding him down, and actually shrinking Hawk's hands into the ground. Hawk confused for a second. Deku just stating that anything he puts in a shadow stays in a shadow. Along with that, as Deku would put one of his legs on Hawk's back, and grab the wing, saying that he's fairly certain that this quirk will be useful. But I have a question. What happens if I take the mutation quirk? Hawk just staring down at Midoriya, or staring up at him, trying to think. He can't move and he's immobilized. And Endeavor is currently dealing with something else. Tamaki's trying to run in. Two Midoriyas splitting off from this one, and taking care of him. At least holding him off. Tamaki using his quirk and trying to, well, save Hawk. Grabbing onto this Midoriya and trying to pull him away. Being surprised, and it's basically like clay. His tentacle just comes back straight through him and, well, he reforms around it. Realizing that is not good. That's a duplicate. Where's the real one? Trying to dodge away from these other two. More and more pros coming in. As one thing does happen. There is a loud sound. And Mount Lady would go smashing into a building. Not really sure what happened. Kirishima stepping out of the rubble, and actually cracking his knuckles, as over in the distance, there is something else. Momo Yaoyorozu just turned Kirishima into a human cannonball. Now, Kirishima, he would just jump around, using his super strength, a quirk Deku has deemed Kirishima to need for the next coming battles. Deku has been getting quirks that people will need, and has actually been thinking. If they were toying around, then the next time they fight the heroes, they will crush them, and put them under their boot. If they don't bend, they will break. Now, Midoriya would just begin. Back over with Hawk, taking his quirk, Fiercely Feather, as every version of Midoriya there suddenly sprouts a pair of wings. The one fighting Lemillion would actually look back at these, and actually smirk, as they grab the feathers and begin tossing them straight out towards him, Lemillion permeating through them, as they all begin to fight. Now, one of the versions of Midoriya would aim for Endeavor, and go to fight him. They would have been able to blast him in the back and actually slash once more into him, hurting him quite a bit more and injuring the number one hero, as a lot of people are just saying that this is not good. The pros are being taken down by 5 people. What is happening here? Why is this happening? Now, with that being said, this is whenever the world would kind of feel weird. Everyone noticing something in the sky as someone is blasting in. Now, this is Ayama. He's up in the air, and he's actually been told to shine bright. The way his quirk has been working, Deku has redirected it. It used to be a naval laser, before he improved it to be all around his body. And then Deku helping to enhance it. Today, he is going to test a new ability. He calls this Bounce Off, or well, Reflection, where he would just stay up in the sky and let loose his power through every part of his body, allowing himself to be brighter than the sun itself. Basically like a, what was it? In Dragon Ball Super they did Solar Flare, and I think they did like a Solar Flare times 100 or something. I know it was called something stupid, I think. Or it was probably just called that. I don't understand why they never used that move in the Tournament of Power. Anyways. Now, Ayama is doing that. A lot of the heroes are actually covering their eyes as they are blinded. The ones who aren't are, well, just quite simply at least trying to focus on their fights. As Deku, he is still maneuvering around things with telekinesis, and trying to hit the pros. The one with Hawk is telling him one thing. He is quirkless now, so these wings aren't yours. Bringing his foot directly into the center of his back, and grabbing at his wings. Hawk basically paralyzed with fear, immobilized, and scared. As Deku begins to pull, everyone hearing Hawk scream, as those who take their attention away from their battles would be surprised and ambushed. Tamaki getting socked across the face. Tamaki trying to catch the punch. Now, whenever that does happen, this is whenever Deku would have done one thing. Augmentation. Turning his hands into claws more like it. Getting rid of 2 of his fingers and his pointer finger. And actually beginning to grab it around Tamaki's hands. These may be claws, yes, but still. He is hard as diamond. No matter how much he tries to fight back, he will be stronger. And that's not just it. He's toying with them now. And he's fairly certain they know that. He just wants them to know that no matter how much they struggle, they can't win. So, Hawk is down. As this version of Deku would do one thing. Immediately just pull out swords, made from the feathers of Hawk, and stare at the red blades, slicing them against each other, saying that these won't do. Before the wings on Deku's back go from red, to a dark black color, and actually growing a bit in size. Everyone watching as Deku would just drop the blades, and pull out sharper ones. These ones actually being clearly coated in this hardened material Deku's made out of. They don't know what it is yet. The last time, they found a diamond, so they're pretty sure that's what it is. Deku just letting off his wings, and flapping as hard as he can, blasting as many of these feathers in each direction as possible, along with his senses increasing. As one thing happens, the Deku fighting Mirio punches him straight through a building and sends him flying. As Mirio would come back in, flying directly at Deku using Black Whip. Doing one thing Sir told him not to do. The boy has a super regeneration quirk. So, if need be, or, well, if you think it is responsible, use the quirk near to deadly states. Never go deadly. Mirio doing one thing, stabbing upwards in a Deku with a Black Whip blade, directly around his wrist, and above his forearm. Deku actually somewhat coughing up blood, before looking down and seeing Mirio's arm, smirking, holding out his hand and blasting him with power, blasting Mirio with the air cannon, sending him flying away. Everyone a bit confused. Now, the heroes aren't really sure what's going on. Each time they think that they have all this kid's quirks labeled down, he gets a new one. Or he just takes another one. Now, exactly what is up with this? Now then, with that being said, Deku would look at the fight with Todoroki, or the Todorokis, and their family drama. Because that's always funny. Now, he's watching Todoroki actually bash Endeavor across the face, as Endeavor is freezer burns. One thing happening. He hears Todoroki say that he will never be anything like him. And in fact, the day he is going to be one day in hell. A cold one. So cold itself that not even you will be able to heat it up. As he sends a final punch across Endeavor's face, knocking him to the ground, looking directly at Deku. Deku beginning to walk over. Endeavor looking up through his one good eye, and staring directly at Deku as he brings his hand down. Endeavor trying to fight back, bringing up his hand and blasting Midoriya with fire. Deku just still hardening his point to the point of diamonds, grabbing Endeavor by the forehead and beginning to squeeze, ripping the quirk out of his body, and telling Todoroki that he'll hand this to him later. For now, he wants to give it a shot. Do you mind? Go ahead. I do at least want to see what his fire can do. Besides, if I don't want the quirk after that, you can take it. Good. Well now, take your pick of the heroes. Him just looking around. Everyone's seeing as the number one hero is Corkless, meaning that he just lost the spot. Now then, with that being said, you have one thing happen. I believe now she's the number 7 hero, the dragon hero lady. She's coming to rush in, trying to actually fight against Midoriya. However, whenever she goes to grab at him or rush at him, she gets blasted by multiple cannons. Confused, looking around and looking through the air, as she goes to bring her hand up and fly in that direction, because I believe she has dragon wings. Hang on. Now, as soon as the dragon hero gets airborne, she would have been met with a massive hole in her wings, which would have caught her off guard, as one person is at least watching the battle, from a distance. Mei Hatsume, testing out a new weapon, as she pulls the hammer back, engaging the shell, and actually puts a new one in, loading it upwards and seeing exactly what happened. Thinking, if she needs to fight to be able to, well, at least earn her place with the research she's learned, then she'll do so. In fact, the technology she's heard about and even seen is not legal, but it's amazing. So, she'll at least fight as an advocate of this better world that she's heard so much about. As she sends off another round. actually waiting for the sound this time. It colliding with Ryuku's shoulder, and actually exploding inside of her arm. That's catching her off guard. As Momo would do one thing, making a grenade launcher, and another one, beginning to fire it downwards into the crowd, trying to at least lure heroes away from the fight. The ones that keep interrupting are getting annoying. Meanwhile, back over with Midoriya versus Lemillion. Deku, he has gotten annoyed. Anytime he punches through this guy, he just, well, punches through him. And he just at least tries to blind him sometimes. But he's not having any of that anymore. As he does one thing. Throwing out his wings and using air jets, blasting backwards as he does let out fire. Air jet and fire, or Endeavor's fire, are making blue fire, along with his maximum speed increasing with overclock. So at this point, Deku can move very fast, in very little time. Doing one thing. He knows that the guy permeated this time. So, he thinks I can't touch him. But one thing. Something isn't permeated, isn't Lemillion? Deku freezing time. Lemillion basically stuck there, flying through the air, as Deku would have floated over. And do one thing, beginning to use these, well, heavily sharpened blades to poke it through Lemillion's body. Beginning to just put them all there and seeing what happens, until he finally does find something. One blade doesn't go straight in, so clearly, this is going to be interesting. Him stabbing it through and actually unfreezing time. Lemillion moving forwards, as he would begin to scream out in pain. The blade in his leg is, well, it's in his leg. It's actually in his leg. He permeated that one because he needed to at least make sure to stay on the ground. Or to keep something solid. If he doesn't, then he basically just doesn't feel right. Now, Lemillion would have been confused as to how that even happened, as Deku would do one thing, saying that the fight has been fun, but if you use that Cork again, I'm taking it from you. I can't take one for all. Or I don't believe so. How about I take both of those Quarks from you, Lemillion? Then we'll see exactly what happens. Lemillion actually a bit in shock, as Deku would then just light up his hand with fire, saying that, in fact, how about this for an ultimatum? The next time you use that permeation, I fry civilians. And those lives are on your hands. How about that? Lemillion actually having his eyes widen. As we'll cut back over to the battle with Tamaki and Nejire. Now, they are trying to check on Hawk, but Tamaki would have been a bit surprised. Whenever something happens, he gets coated in acid, and his arms begin to burn up, actually having to use his fingers and actually peel away the shell he made, as this would have surprised him and caught him off guard. People being shocked to see more of the UA students, along with Jiro getting onto the battlefield. Her coming in and blasting her way straight for Nejire, coming in and letting off a loud sound of, well, sound. Anyways, after she blasts that at her, she would have been surprised when Nejire does counter, letting out her spiral or wave motion, beginning to actually fight more and more. As one hero has been called in to sort out this mess. Eraserhead. He has showed up, and he's using his Quark, a bit surprised to see his former students. As you have one thing happening. Todoroki. He and Dabi are both holding on to Endeavor's head, as he's on his knees, telling Aizawa that if he takes a step closer, they will fry him to a crisp. Aizawa using his Quark and walking forwards, saying that that is not an option right now. He understands what has happened, and they need to come back. Come back to UA and stop this stupid game. Now, I understand that he has gotten into your heads, but that boy, he is evil. Whatever he has promised you. As Todoroki and someone just look at him. Someone questioning for a second if he's even aware of what he's talking about, before starting to actually laugh, saying that he knew that guy long before UA. In fact, they already had everything planned out. Ayama getting blasted, well, not blasted, but at least hearing a blast, as he jumps backwards and begins to turn his head, blinking for 1 second, before looking straight up to see Ayama, with his hand out raised and actually floating through the air, using his quirk. Similarly, kind of like how Endeavor used his quirk to stay up in the air during the fight with the high-end Nomu. Or as he is nicknamed, Hood. Now, Ayama would have blasted in and try punching at Endeavor at Eraserhead. Eraserhead erasing his quirk as he would go flying into the ground and go to get back up. As soon as that happens, Eraserhead would have grabbed Ayama, telling him to stop and that this isn't the right thing to do, as he would have been stabbed in the back of the leg and actually scream, turning around to find Toga as she pulls the blade up and actually licks the blood, and uses her new quirk, copying his quirk, along with Monoma actually smacking his hands with Toga, the two copying the same quirk. As Monoma would run it in, and immediately uppercut Eraserhead, sending him not flying, but at least away from Ayama. The two getting him back up as they look around for Midoriya. Now, the one that was battling Tamaki would have put itself back together, since it was needed. Anytime Deku destroys one of these clones, he can recall it back, or bring it back from the dead if you want to be technical about it, as it would have raised out of the ground. Or at least that's what it looks like, it rebuilding itself. More and more and more. As in the distance they can hear something, a large sonic boom, as a building behind them gets destroyed and actually taken down. The place begins to come down, and a lot of the pros are beginning to try and evacuate the civilians. Facum is on the scene too. He is trying to save people and actually help more and more. As one thing happens, the real Midoriya would appear, and he is just floating, and he just begins to actually come down, saying that it's quite a surprise, the successor to that Quark, versus the son of the man who made it. Come on, Lemillion, show me what you got. You know my threat already. I know you're not taking me seriously. Otherwise, I would have killed you by now. Lemillion doing one thing. Getting up and actually trying to at least hold the building with Black Whip. Beginning to pull on it and using his power. As he looks around. This is not good. So, he at least needs to chop up the building. Doing one thing, turning Black Whip on its side and pulling it down as hard as possible. As he basically pulls the building in on itself, it collapsing, before permeating through the pile and heading straight for Midoriya. Deku looking at him a bit annoyed, holding out his hand once again and blasting air cannon, as much as possible, over and over and over again. Lemillion, one of his ears are actually bleeding, so Deku can at least tell he does use half of his senses when they do fight. Perfect. As over with Eraserhead, he is getting his shit handed to him. The version of Deku took his quirk because they thought it would be useful, before snapping his neck like a twig. Nejire is still fighting with Jiro, as this version of Deku would have walked over, and blast Nejire away with air cannon, before throwing his hand outwards and offering it to Jiro, her looking at him and smiling, taking his hand as one thing happens. She gets the air cannon and a loud scream can be heard. Present Mike Deku turning to see him before he does one thing. He thinks that this will at least be an easier target. President Mike was never serious. He's a DJ first and a hero seconds. Deku falling backwards. As Mike watches this version of him disappear before he reappears directly behind Mike and grabs him, throwing his hands behind him and actually grabbing him by the mouth, welding it closed and just, well, chopping him in the back of the neck. Mike falling to the ground. Deku walking past him and saying that isn't that funny. Your quirk is useless now, Mike. Anyways, since you can't use it, I think I should take it. Fair trade. Mike just looking at Midoriya, with fear in his eyes. Deku smirking, before doing one thing. He smashes his knee into Mike's nose, over and over and over again, until he grabs him by his hair and actually rips the quirk out of him, before tearing Mike's head off, and sending it flying. Now, Facum is still on scene, and he is horrified by what he just saw. As one thing happens, he would go barreling in at Midoriya. Being surprised whenever Deku does turn his hand, and pick him up, throwing him into the distance. Facum basically going flying through the air, trying to recover, hitting a lot of buildings like he's a bouncy ball, and trying to maintain balance. Or at least not hit the windows, because civilians might be inside. Now then, Deku, he is still fighting with Lemillion, and the version of him with Jiro has handed over President Mike's quirk, her being able to use 3 Soundwave quirks to overpower Nejire, and actually blast her into the ground with as much power as possible, as Nejire would have been sent flying into a building, and Lemillion would be in a grapple with Midoriya, before just asking one simple question. Who are you really? Sir said they had your name, so please, just tell me, why are you doing this? Really, you want to know my name? Fine. As Deku deactivates Lemillion's quirk, throwing his arms over him and actually just socking him in the gut, before beating him into the distance, sending him flying, and then using telekinesis to grab him and pull him forwards, flying in and smashing into his face. Lemillion bleeding heavily, before Deku does one thing. The version of him throwing his hand out back to Jiro, her taking it and confused whenever Deku takes back 2 quirks. Her being a bit disappointed, but at least getting what he's about to do, she thinks, before the version of Deku flying would throw his wings outwards, and scream that he is Izuku Midoriya. That is my true name. Is that what you want to hear, hero? Because so far, I've butchered all of you. Before Lemillion comes flying in, with One for All, throwing himself to further limits, thinking more and more about this. He needs to make sure to take this villain down. If he doesn't, then his friends are going to die. As his eyes would finally look back at the other battles, Nejire is in a wall, and Jiro is currently blasting her full of sound. Nejire only has 1 good arm left, and it doesn't seem like she's, well, able to move anymore. Along with Tamaki, he's fighting against someone who can spray acid and, well, that's not good. Along with the fact that Kendo is currently just blasting her across the face, with large punches. And, well, the other heroes are being taken care of by Momo and Mei Hatsume from a distance. While Reiko, she's doing one thing. She would come in, surprising everyone, as she would have grabbed onto the back of the dragon hero and began to actually try and blast into her skin, trying to get through it more and more. Her just saying that she's never done this before, but let's at least give it a shot. Before another loud bang can be heard, Mario actually throwing his hands in that direction, and grabbing Reiko, pulling her off of, well, the hero. Before Deku throws his hands outwards and actually grabs Lemillion's, and actually does a snap black whip off of it, as he would have thrown himself outwards and grabbed Reiko, giving her a quirk before telling her to at least make sure to stay safe. Telling her that the way she uses it is like this: focus it into your feet. Before he would have just let her fly off. Her confused for a second, throwing out her feet and trying to use the quirk, as she begins to slow down. Before realizing that Deku just gave her air jet. Now, with that being said, Deku is using multitask to its absolute limits, and beginning to think. This is going to be crazy. Oh well. Alright then, hero. Show me what you got. As all the other versions of Midoriya would recede. And, well, one thing would happen. Deku would just throw his arms out, and tell Mirio to come at him with full power. He knows he's holding back. Mirio rushing in, as the heroes remaining on the battlefield are being taken down, slowly picked off one by one. Facum is still on his way. And one thing would happen. Deku and Lemillion would collide fist. These two throwing a punch so powerful, all the buildings around them basically stop. And the windows just blow out. Everywhere around them. This is above the city level, or well close to it, as the earth begins to shake, seemingly from their battle. However, it is not from them. Now, the two would get back to it, and begin to collide over and over and over again, before they get into a grapple of strength. Deku using telekinesis to actually push and actually force Lemillion to the ground, before smashing him into the ground and beginning. Lemillion trying to slash Deku with Black Whip. Deku stabbing his hands directly in Lemillion's chest and actually pumping him full of fear. Lemillion beginning to scream, as Deku would have then smashed him in the ribs, breaking some of them, before beating him across his face. Everyone who is not in Deku's group is watching this, in complete shock. Heroes have not had fights like this in years, not even All Might. And what is happening now? That boy is supposed to be stronger than All Might. Now, with that being said, quite a lot of people are beginning to chant the heroes on, since this is a dire situation, and they're not sure what is going to happen next. With that, they would have at least tried doing so, before Deku does look in that direction, and shout that that's useless. The heroes are just something society tells you that are good. What do? They follow laws and enforce them. I don't. Deku turning back to Lemillion, and grabbing him by his face, he just screams in it with Aizawa's. Present Mike's Cork. Lemillion actually feeling himself go deaf, along with his eyeballs beginning to bleed in his nose. Deku beginning to beat him more and more, as he throws his hand into Lemillion's face, ripping out permeation, and going to pull out One for All. However, the quirk is annoying, and it fights back. Actually, Deku getting sent flying across the battlefield, without a punch. People being shocked and confused. Deku getting back up and pissed off, saying, "What the hell? That wasn't supposed to happen." Lemillion trying to at least stand up, saying that he can't take One for All. Of course you can't. Not even All for One can. Deku looking at that grin Lemillion has on his face, even though he's completely scared, frightened in fact. He can't see out of one of his eyes and he can't hear. This is no different from him using his quirk though. In fact, he'll get it. As he goes flying in, Tamaki shouting for Lemillion to just stay down, as he would have been hit with an acid in his back, falling onto the ground and beginning to scream. People watching as Mina grabs Tamaki and rips off his cape, and begins to tear away his support items. Him trying to at least think more about this. What is something he ate this morning that will help? Come on. Beginning by creating a claw and actually throwing it around and smashing it into Mina's face, scraping up the side of her face as she would have pulled backwards, and threw out a large stream of acid, melting Tamaki's left arm. Nidre actually seeing this. Everyone is very battle-worn. In fact, they are very, very tired. Along with the fact that Kirishima's been holding off some of the larger heroes. His fight with Mount Lady was not much of a fight at all, but the one he's having with Facum is a bit worse, since he's been stopping him from getting back in the battle. Facum and him have just been throwing punches over and over and over again. Facum surprised at Kirishima's Quark the shock nullification, and Kirishima surprised that Facum is able to at least withstand his punches with super strength. Before one thing would happen. Eventually, Facum would feel his Quark beginning to strain on his body, so he needs to release this force. As he would do one thing, whenever Kirishima punches into his gut for this last time, he would begin to absorb Kirishima's arm into his fat. Kirishima trying to pull away, and actually fighting most of his body weight, grabbing his own forearm as he begins to try and pull more and more. Facum sucking him in deeper. As one thing would happen, he would let loose his power directly in the middle of the battlefields. After bouncing in, and Kirishima would be sent flying away, smashing through more and more buildings. Facum on his hands and knees, and panting heavily. Through the broken ribs and, well, the one rib sticking into his lung, he has been through hell. Not just that, everyone is, well, they're hurt. And they're trying to recover faster, but the villains just keep attacking. As one thing would happen, a portal would open in the middle of the battlefield, and out steps Shigaraki. He is completely, well, in hysteria, trying to at least get Midoriya's attention. Midoriya socking Lemillion across the face as he sends him flying through a building. In the corner of his eye, he sees him as he looks towards him, and goes flying in to see what's going on. As he would begin talking to Shigaraki. Shigaraki's completely covered in blood, so the meeting did not go well. Asking him what happened, as he's just hysterical, trying to at least speak. Before one thing happens. Facum gets back up, and tries to attack. Deku bringing his hand outwards and smashing it directly into Facum's face. And he begins to do one thing, ripping out Facum's Quark, before crushing his skull, and him falling to the ground. As that would be the end of Facum. Now, Shigaraki would just be trying to explain about what happened. Before one thing happens. He throws his hands down, and the area around him begins to decay. As soon as Deku sees that, he would immediately jump up into the air and grab all of his allies, pulling them upwards. In his confusion, though, he pulled everybody upwards, including the heroes. At least some of them. As Deku would watch one thing happen. Shigaraki is screaming that he knows what he did. He knows what he did. He knows what he did! As he has unlocked the true potential of his Quark. As he is destroying the city around him, and taking it down. Lemillion being completely in shock and seeing this, as he's looking around and trying to at least get civilians off the ground. It is not working though. Without his permeation, he's forced to touch this, or well, not forced, but at least trying to avoid this decay. since if he touches it he might die, seeing quite a lot of this happen to civilians. As Deku does one thing. He floats over to Tamaki in his broken body, asking him if he's perfectly fine. Him looking up through his broken face, saying that Sun Eater, or well, Lemillion will take him down. It doesn't matter what happens to him. Deku is somewhat smirking, punching him across the face and actually taking his quirk, and doing one thing. Holding him by his shirt, he would just say that Lemillion will fall, before letting go of Tamaki, falling into the decay, dying. Now, after that happens, Nejire is still floating there. She's bringing her hand up and at least still trying to do something. Deku floating directly in front of her this time, asking her exactly what has been happening. You seem to be in distress. Are you okay? Her just calling him a monster, saying that he is going to be taken down, and she will avenge her friends. Deku just laughing, saying that that's not going to happen. In fact, how about an ultimatum? This one I know you might like. In fact, it's very beneficial. Deku just putting his hand on her foreheads, saying that if she comes with him, she can keep her quirk. However, she will help take down Lemillion. But if you don't, as she would just spit into his face. Deku wiping it away, before ripping her quirk out of her, and throwing her to the ground. As she is killed in the Decay-Deku. Deku confused. He knows that this has been going on for too long, throwing out his hand and actually turning off Shigaraki's quirk. Coming in and actually doing one thing. As soon as he grabs his arm around him, he would have welded his hands together, stopping him from using his quirk, using overclock, along with actually welding his mouth shut. After, or not welding his mouth shut, he would have used Midnight's quirk to basically make him pass out. As he would just hand Shigaraki over, saying to make sure that he's okay, and take him back to the bar. We don't know what's going on. Find out. I'll handle the rest here. As everyone would retreat, and Lemillion would finally come back, with a broken arm, the wound in his leg, and broken ribs, blind in one eye and deaf in both of his ears, staring directly at Midoriya, saying that it's over. This is going to be the last person who dies. Oh, really? So you're going to kill me? If I have to, I must protect people. Who was that? He killed too many. That was my brother. Funny. What happened? Did you finally find out you killed your parents, Tomura? Now, Lemillion's eyes would widen hearing that, or at least reading Deku's lips, as he's confused by that statement. Tomura killed his parents. That's horrible. Him rushing in, using 1,000,000%. Him breaking his leg as soon as he takes off, and coming charging in. Him and Deku colliding fist. Deku's breaking as soon as he touches Lemillion's, and it going sent flying. As Deku's hand, even though it's diamond, broke off, and Deku would have used his quirk and blast him in the side of the face with the air cannon, at point blank range. Mario broke his arm though, and he is very well injured. Deku doing one thing, smashing him into the ground, actually beginning to use one more move he knows will work. He amps himself up, and turns on his Quark amplifier, beginning to get more powerful. As he would turn around, Lemillion watching this. Even at 1,000,000%, this battle is going to be going on for a while. Lemillion rushing in, breaking his leg again as he would rush forwards, grabbing Deku and actually tossing him through a building. Deku's skin somewhat hardening more and more, until it becomes pure white, an unknown structure. Clearly very, very hard, since even these punches are having trouble breaking through Deku's hardened skin. Deku, he is not sure what this is either, although whenever he does bring up his arms to block and Lemillion punches them, he breaks halfway through Deku's arm. It immediately just regenerating though, so he might as well be doing no damage. Deku smashing his leg upwards in Lemillion, as his fierce feathers, they have evolved, them turning into a giant pair of wings, as he's now able to throw around as much telekinesis as he wants. Doing one thing, setting Mirio ablaze, as Mirio's skin begins to burn and char. Mirio coming in and actually trying to stab into Deku by just trying to punch a hole straight through his chest. Actually doing so in the process but breaking his arm. Everyone watching this happen as Deku actually just cough up a bit of blood, before at least looking like he's defeated. Deku is exhausting his power and his mind, and he needs to calm down, as he would do one thing. Just stare directly at Lemillion. And Lemillion would just smirk, saying that he's very sorry, but he must protect people. Deku smirking too. Lemillion confused, as the illusion would vanish. Mirio's in shock though, he thought that was real. What is this? Him looking around. They are all in the center of the air, and he's surrounded by different things. Deku's creation Quark, along with his illusions, has given him the ability to create anything he imagines. In fact, he has created something Mirio is going to hate. Nejire and Tamaki, his two friends that he has to fight against. These two beating and laying into him. Mirio dropping from his 1 million back down to 100. As they would have begun the fight once more. Deku finally beating Lemillion into the dirt. And the thing of Tamaki and Nejire vanishing. Deku stepping directly forwards, and pulling Lemillion up to the ground, or pulling him up into the air, using telekinesis. Looking directly around. Those people who are left or even remotely alive and close by are looking in his direction, seeing him. Deku using his Cork and announcing that this is their hero, the hero Lemillion and the successor to All Might. His Cork taken, his life taken, and defeated. So, what next? Who is coming in? Will anyone save you, Lemillion? Your friends, your allies, the heroes, all dead. So, what next? As Deku brings out his hands, forming a blade and stabbing it directly into Lemillion's gut, before tearing his arm out, and ending Mirio's life. Mirio feeling what's happening, the power leave his body. As Deku opens, his portal cork that allows him to throw rapid punches, he opens, as it is massive now. In fact, it could be considered a wall, let alone probably even its own building. Walking through and getting back into the bar, taking this thing off of his head, as soon as he does so, he would drop to the ground, exhausted and actually panting. Kirigiri asks Midori if he's okay, and if he knows the situation. Deku confused, looking up and asking what he's talking about, before his eyes get horrified. Seeing in the grisly scene, Tomura curled up into a ball, surrounded by blood. What happened? It was your father. He went to go meet with this man, Overhaul. It was a bloodbath. What do you mean a bloodbath? What happened? Midoriya. All for One's dead. Deku looking directly at him and his eyes widening, in complete disbelief. Not even sure of what to say. How? Why? As he was just said, whenever they went to go meet with him, Tomura has at least told me something. He wouldn't stop talking, he wouldn't stop talking, he wouldn't stop talking. What does that mean? Now, he did at least say that, well, they wanted to get a blood sample from you, Midoriya. They wanted to find out what makes you so special. They have a plan to take away all the Quarks in the world, trying to cure humans. At least that's what Tomura said. Now, with that happening, Deku would have walked over and bent down, asking if it's really true. Is Dad dead? Is Dad dead? Tomura! Before Deku smacks him across the face and looks him in the eyes. Telepathy. As he looks inside his brother's head, seeing his memories. He sees Overhaul asking about Midoriya by his real name, especially his mother. He wants to get a blood sample of his mother's blood, his All For One's blood, and then Midoriya's, because it might hold a secret to removing Quarks, and in fact, if he does have enough of it, then that means he could do it permanently. Using Principal Nezu's Cork and actually thinking about this. If that's not even possible, the only way he'd have enough of my blood is if he drained me dry over 1,000 times. Millions, in fact. Deku just thinking. He thinks my mom has this quirk too. Damn it. Before he does turn to Kirigiri, ask him, where is he? Kirigiri just saying that he is, well, not here. Before Deku does at least do one thing. He turns to Tomura and tells him that it will all be fine. He's gonna go get the man who killed Dad. Before he does at least walk away. Deku, at least trying to think about this. Walking into the separate room and immediately just collapsing, crying in his hands. Unsure of what to say. As all of his allies would run in. His friends. The girls comforting him. Deku trying to at least figure this out. His dad can't die. He's been alive for 2 centuries. A simple Quark can't kill him. We take Quarks. It's what we do. Deku getting annoyed as he smashes his hand down, breaking the floor. As David's shield would come running and finding the situation. Deku is crying and Tomura is covered in blood in the next room. As he would have asked Kirigiri what happened. Him explaining that Gigantomachia and All For One are dead. And that they've been murdered. So, with that, Melissa would see this happening, along with May. The two watching the most powerful man in the world now crying in his hands. And, well, showing remorse. Melissa walking over and seeing this. Telling Midoriya that it's going to be fine. And, well, it's going to be okay. Your dad's... As Deku just look at her. His eyes full of grief. Not hatred, not fear, just grief. The man who raised him is dead. Deku can't come to terms with this. He can't. As a portal opens directly in front of him. And he jumps through. Going to find this man. Everyone in shock at what just happened. Deku doing one thing, as he's directly over the city. And he's looking around, trying to find it. Where is it? Looking for the name, or the Quark, whichever one it is. He's not caring anymore. Overhaul, overhaul, overhaul. Where are you? Him flying around at top speeds. People confusing him for Hawk. Before the news would reach them that the number 2 hero Hawk is dead. Clearly this is that villain, and he's flying around the city like a madman. He is going so fast people can barely register if he's even there or not. He might as well be a dot moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour through space. Something you can't even see. Now, with that being said, Deku would have eventually found it, after looking through enough walls, before smashing into and actually landing into the Hasakai base. People staring at Midoriya, as he stands back up and looks around with his wings. Everyone in shock and confused. Deku just doing one thing. He begins to murder his way through everyone, killing the Hasakai, and taking everyone's Quark that he meets. Anytime someone gets in his way, it's steal Quark, kill, or Quark, kill, Quark. Sometimes if he sees a Quark that looks too odd or weird, he just straight up executes the person. With pyrokinesis, he's not playing around anymore. And there is a portal opening behind Deku. Everyone walking through, and seeing what has happened. Now, after Midoriya kills his way through most of the people there, he would have actually been surprised to find an underground base. So this is where he was hiding. Everyone is a bit concerned though, since he is just gone mad. All the girls are trying to figure this out, as Deku would have finally killed his way through more people, getting the guys Mimic Quark, Rappa's Quark, everyone's. Whoever he finds, he takes. His body and mind feeling the strain on these, as he would have finally encountered Overhaul. He is doing an experiment on Eri, and he has been unaware of the situations, as the door would have smashed open, and Deku would just walk in, looking directly at him. Overhaul a bit surprised and taken aback, before he realizes that this is, well, the guy he's heard about, saying that he's a bit surprised to see him. So, I'm guessing you're the guy who's, well, I'm supposed to talk to. You killed my father. What? Oh, no, I'm afraid you're mistaken. Overhaul walking forwards, his gloves beginning to tear away, lunging outwards saying that he did kill his father, and now he wants to experiment with his blood. Now, as soon as he jumps forwards, he would phase directly through this creation, and be surprised whenever shackles cover his arms, and he gets pulled straight upwards. Deku, the real one, walking in, before smashing Overhaul into the gut, telling him that he did not deserve to die. He just wanted to talk with you. You wanted to talk with us. What was that about? Ah, well, if you just put me down, I can explain myself. Then, we can get this all sorted out. Deku just saying that does not make sense. Before, Overhaul would just say, of course, but let me explain my Quark. I can take apart and put it back together, matter. Deku just staring at him, before looking into the room, seeing the little girl in the chair, finding it to be a bit odd, seeing her covered in wounds, and staring directly back at Overhaul. Clearly his experiments are bad, and they are not continuing anymore. Deku doing one thing. He walks over to Eri, and picks her up, and he hands her to somebody. As soon as he hands her to them, he would have closed the door behind him. And, well, the screams would begin, until they stop, 5 minutes later, Deku took Overhaul's Quark, after immobilizing him. Now, Overhaul's forces were not prepared for this. Deku doing a direct assault, and murdering everyone in sight, as he would have finally walked out of the room, and just walk away. Now, outside the base, things are a bit odd and weird. Deku has found that he's at a bit more peace of mind after that. He doesn't like doing that. He lost control again. He needs to talk with people. He needs to stay calm. Deku flooding his body with adrenaline, and actually calming himself down a bit. Thinking about it, looking down at his hands, reading off the words that pass over them. Quark, Quark, Quark. More and more and more. Different versions of different Quarks, and, well, more things. Finally looking up, to see what has happened. He sees his girls with Eri, and his friends. Well, the guys. Along with Melissa, Kirigiri, Shigaraki, and David. As Deku would finally do one thing. He would just say that it's over. The heroes are gone. And they are going to be starting over. Does everyone here understand? Everyone just saying that they get it. Now, this is whenever the next couple months go by, and they would have figured out exactly what was going on with Eri. Everyone beginning to stop blaming Midoriya for what he did. The assault on the Hasaikai base was much deserved, and after Overhaul found out about Midoriya's Quark, his experiments with Eri were getting a bit more odd, seeing if he can get Eri to take away Quarks too. This being a bit of a bad thing. Overhaul getting a bit more sadistic and crazy with his experiments. Before Deku stopped him. Deku, he knows he cannot bring his father back. And he's talked to his mother. She's lost Sasaki once before. But losing him again like this, it's not the way her life was supposed to be. Deku talking with her and actually crying, as things would be getting a bit odd. Deku finds himself to be the leader of Japan, after talking with more and more people, and more people following him. Eventually, years would pass. Roughly, let's see, 10 to 9 years. And Deku is a bit more, well, calmed down and happy. His life here is perfect. As this morning he wakes up, and he gets tackled by his kids, finding this to be a bit odd and confused, before he does begin to levitate out of bed, holding his hands up and trying to at least maintain his own balance. As the kid he has with Uraka, she got, well, the gravity Quark, along with Hawk's Quark, so it's a bit weird. Apparently, all the Quarks Midoriya has, some of them have been passed down to his children. As one of his sons, the smartest one of the two twins Sayako had whenever she was pregnant, is, well, a bit more intriguing. His quirk is called hyperintelligence, along with him actually getting a form of Deku's healing factor, along with his grandma's telekinesis. The other twin has somewhat opposite powers. He has a creation quirk, a form of air jet, and more quirks. In fact, newer ones. Each one of Deku's children have different quirks, along with Deku at least being happy to see them in the morning. He has about, let's see, the twins, so 11 kids. All of them have different quirks, and, well, they're all powerful. Now, all 11 of Deku's kids, they have remarkable and odd quirks. In fact, 2 or 3 of them have a version of his stockpile ability, which he was meaning to actually copy and give to his kids, thinking that all of them deserve to have this ability. They all need to at least experience it once, and if they do not want the ability, then he will not force it on them. The world he created is somewhat peaceful. Most of it is, well, forced that way though. Deku has given his quirks, or given quirks to people in power that support him. So this means that at any time, if anyone believes it to, they could try and fight someone that believes in him, and they would lose. As Deku would walk into the kitchen and see the son he has with Momo, along with his daughter. The 2 of them are actually working on something, and Deku would have just walked over and see it. His son Franklin is working on something. In fact, he's building a brand new galaxy. Deku at least finding it to be completely insane. As his son, Deku's son, he is holding his hands outwards, showing a hyper-evolution of the creation quirk, creating a reality. Deku, he understands that his kids, they're going to be, well, near to gods. They are still human. He doesn't want them to forget that. As the daughter he has with Toga would run by, and she actually just threw out her arms, showing off more and more quirks. Every one of his children do. Deku is never really sure where the quirks end at, since at this point in his life, at the age of 25, Deku is living happily with, well, somewhat of a weird house. This is a mansion overlooking a city, quite the big one for his huge family, and he would separate into 10. At this point in his life, he's been able to do a lot of things. In fact, these 10 would begin to split off into 10, repeating and repeating and repeating, until most of them would leave. The original 10 staying, and actually spending time with each one of their wives. They're all getting ready to have another kid. At least, Kendo is. Momo, in fact, she was kind of a bit shocked and a bit more scared of the potential for another child. So she only left it at Franklin. Deku didn't want to force her. In fact, he was perfectly fine with it. He still loves her. But she does at least want to understand how Franklin's quirk got to be so powerful. Along with Mina's child. Mina's child shows a form of, well, Bubble Girl's quirk, after he took it away from her, of course. Along with her acid. Toru's child, though, is a bit more of an odd one. She can manipulate shadows and actually use them as puppets. Deku actually thinking that this is a bit fun, as he would head outside. His life is perfectly fine and happy. He can accept that his father's dead, along with the fact that he would call Tomura, seeing how he's been doing. Tomura, he's actually been doing a lot better. He's been able to meet someone, and in fact, after Deku destroyed his quirk, he was able to come to terms with things. He's actually been seeing a doctor and getting help with his trauma, along with switching his name back. He's not Tomura Shigaraki anymore. He's Tomura Shimura, and he will accept that. People are still confused though. Whenever they thought this hero or villain was taking over, the world was supposed to get darker. But it didn't, it got brighter. They actually do approve of this, and anyone who stands against him is the true villain. Deku is happy. As well, one of his other children, the one he has with Chiro, would come running up, showing off her grandpa's air jets, along with sporting white hair, and a purple streak. Deku picking her up and actually swinging her around. So it's nice to see her today. And looking back to see Jiro, smiling. As Deku, he might be the leader of the new world, but he does need to at least keep things up on the farm. The place is big, yeah, but still. It's at least some way to keep busy. Along with that, he does believe that this life will be something special. So, he doesn't want to ruin it on revenge anymore. In fact, he's over with that. As he does actually walk back inside, and head to his personal office. Having to actually shoo out the kid he has with Toga and Asui. They do understand that their dad works in here, and things are beginning to get more and more complicated. As soon as Deku closes his office door, he would have stood back up and walked to the center of the room, beginning to float into the air, as he mixes his own quirks together once again, and does what his son can do. After shutting down prisons and actually taking villains' quirks and executing them, he found the one villain who got away from him. The villain with dimensional kinesis. The quirk itself did not seem very special, but apparently, each time you use it, you jump to different realities. The thing that was odd about this villain, though, this quirk he has, he's quirkless in our world. After Deku took it and, began to use more of his quirks together, he discovered that mixing creation, illusions, and, multitasking, along with overclocking and more things, he's discovered that he can create a quirk himself. He can create his own galaxy at least. His son making a universe, though, is still impressive, showing exactly how strong his children will become. As he just looks out his window and thinks, out there somewhere, out there some way, he knows people are going to be after him and his family. But even then, as reality would warp around him. Now, after this glitch, Deku would do one thing. He would look through one of his clone's eyes and actually see what's going on. Seeing that his clone is meeting Todoroki, along with one going to Ayama's fashion show. After the events with this whole villain thing, and life somewhat going back to normal, Ayama was considered to be a very good villain, and a very good fashion designer. So, he was able to at least get a job there, and work his way up, making it up there very, very fast, due to his high-ranking public status already. Meanwhile, over with Todoroki, he's actually been, he's met with a woman, and him and her are supposed to get married soon, along with the fact that after basically charring his father, him and his brother had a bit of a better relationship, and Toya was able to get his scars healed, Deku giving him a regeneration quirk, and taking away his cremation, giving him an ice Quark, which also meant that he has cremation. Now, along with that, you do also have Kirishima. Kirishima, after all this was over, he kind of had a bit of trouble before deciding to wander the world. He wants to seek out a challenge, and Deku understands that. Kirishima tried battling Deku a few times, after this was all over, the results being the same. So Kirishima decided to go on a bit of a training montage, where he's going to travel the world, and come back, wanting to fight strong opponents. So, he's going to be doing that, along with the fact that apparently that other version of Mina may have hooked up with him, and the two might be traveling together. So, that's going to at least be a bit interesting for a while. As Deku, he just thinks about this. One of his children knocking on his door, and him having to open it. Apparently, the daughter he has with May seems to be getting in a lot more trouble. She does have another intelligence quirk, along with a form of creation and illusions, meaning that she is perfect for what she does. Her mom basically got her, as soon as she could walk, to start trying out inventions, just like how her father used to. Before eventually, after things settled down, she was a bit confused at what she was supposed to do. Before Deku helped to get her on a better path, helping her with creating and actually showing her more and more things. She thought she was spending time with a clone. Apparently she was not. Deku had to explain to her how exactly he's at every place at once. There's always a piece of him inside one of his clones. And she sort of fell in love with him because of that. He tries to be everywhere at once even though he can't be. Along with that, one of his other children, the one he has with Melissa, she was apparently also with she was also there with this incident. She has Deku's fire quirk, and in fact she also does have an ice one. Deku understanding where that came from, along with the fact that she's able to actually morph her body into different things, like elements. And apparently she can also conduct electricity. Melissa is still a bit confused about that, but she's not really complaining. After seeing exactly how Midori has helped her family, and helped giving her dad a new purpose in life, she began to at least stick around. Especially after hearing what Deku did to Overhaul. She thought that was quite horrifying. But after what Overhaul did to a child, clearly it was needed. She didn't really feel remorse after that. She thought she was a bad person. Until Deku explained to her one thing. He's the bad guy. Everyone thinks he is. Just because you think bad thoughts doesn't mean you are one. In fact, it's just more than that. Her at least understanding better. Until one day, whenever she was going to create another device, it nearly exploded. If Deku didn't use clockwork that day, she surely would have died. In fact, someone has that quirk to think. It changed her future. Once already. And Deku changed it twice now. So, as May and Melissa would walk in, ask Midori exactly what is happening. And if that little glitch was caused by Francis, or, well, Franklin, not Francis. Deku's saying no. In fact, he's guessing that that was him. He's still not very sure. Dimensional kinesis is quite odd. As he looked towards them, the two basically sitting down in his lap as Deku's children would have come over and actually ask their dad questions. Deku at least smiling as he does instruct them on how to do things. May watching her child put together a prototype made out of a creation and an illusion. Basically, this does at least look like a certain... The prototype is functional, but it looks more like an illusion than a creation. That is somewhat how this Cork works. Well, the other child, they are at least asking Dad about their fire, and, well, their water, because they're not really sure how they can control more than one element. In fact, they do want to at least practice with it. Deku at least smirking, and, well, not smirking, smiling, saying that he'll teach her how to do that later. In fact, how about this? I know a particular ice quirk that would be very helpful. So, do you think you could do me a favor and water all the plants around the mansion? Melissa's daughter being a bit more happy, and at least saying that she'll do that. Deku saying that she can at least do one thing. Imagine like you're using telekinesis. Or, do you want telekinesis? Melissa at least telling Deku that she thinks that she has enough quirks right now. Deku's saying, okay, okay. Geez, isn't your mom a party pooper? Melissa's child at least smiling, and sticking out her tongue before she runs off. Well, May's child is still trying to figure things out. Deku's saying that if he wants to do something, or at least some help on that, move it up by 2 inches to the left and about 4 degrees to the right. The child a bit, well, saying that they can do it before they listen to Deku. And it works. The child turning around and giving Deku at least a weird look, asking him how did he know that. Deku explaining that his quirks he's had for a long time. But hey, I'll explain that to you when you're older, okay? As he would just say his father's name. May was actually very, well, confused about this. She wasn't sure exactly what to name the child, and Deku found a good one. Along with that, this has been a very, very weird day. He does at least need to figure things out. The usual chaos around the mansion and things going on outside the house are still a bit tricky. But even then, as he would give his wives a kiss, saying that today has been a good day, as he would stand up and walk over to the window, looking outside. Now, Deku would just mumble something under his breath, that he needs to hear himself. You fought for your ending, just like he said. Just like you said. Looking into the mirror, or at least looking up to see his name. Usually it would be shifting, Izuku Midoriya, Shigaraki. But now it has settled, it's stopped. His real name, the one he can wear like a badge of honor, not having to hide it anymore. Izuku Midoriya. He lives once again, and he's happy with his family. Something no one can take away. Now, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video and have an amazing day, an amazing night. This has been really fun to record, and, well, the series is finally over. To be completely honest, I'm actually a bit teary-eyed at this. This is one of my funnest series to create and actually make. Along with that, I actually do have feedback from you guys on it, on what type of quirks to put in, because I do actually ask you guys that question in the comments, or, well, ask you guys that question in the video. I'm actually kind of a bit, well, not bit, I'm a bit happy that I'm able to put your guys' ideas into the what if, and, well, I also did do a mini story arc for, I believe, Natsuo, about his Quark info checker. Now, along with that, I'm quite aware of the way my voice sounds. I'm not trying to sound mean or be an asshole about this, but a lot of people think that I overdo it with what if sometimes because I upload so much. I don't really feel like I'm ever overdoing it. In fact, I actually feel like sometimes I'm underdoing it because I like to upload a lot of videos. This is actually something I really enjoy doing. I like to sit down, take a minute, record a video, edit it, and, well, at least just post it. I don't really see it as a job or anything to, well, see as annoying. I genuinely enjoy doing it, and I would do it more if I could. So, with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video, and have an amazing night. Once again. Now, I do hope you guys loved the series, because it is officially over.